By now, I trust that most of you have heard of Bill C-14. That's the new law or bill that regulates medically assisted dying in Canada. On June 17th, the Senate passed the bill, and now it's law in our country. Of course, many would argue that the restrictions that are in place are not adequate. And to find out more of what this means, what the restrictions are, what the bill says, and especially how it is going to affect medical practitioners in Canada, I'm now joined by Larry Worthen. He is the Executive Director of the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Canada. Larry, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I should have said Deacon Larry Worthen. It's
Yeah.
important to note.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start with this Christian Medical and Dental Society. Why is there a Christian Medical and Dental Society in Canada?
Well, the importance of our society is that it helps physicians and dentists to be able to integrate their professional practice with their practice of Christianity.
Okay, and is that because, is it difficult to integrate those two?
Actually it is. It has been historically difficult and probably always will be in the future, in that there are many ethical issues that are crossover issues between the Christian faith and the practice of medicine.
Okay, and I can think of things like abortion or euthanasia, but are there other issues that you'd say where there's difficulty integrating faith with that those particular professions?
Well, there are the moral issues like you said, abortion, medical aid in dying,
yes.
Contraception,
right.
Things like sex reassignments, surgery. Right. But I think also there's all the temptations that medical and dental students have to kind of get in over their heads financially,
really?
and which is a really important issue as well that they have to contend with.
Yeah, interesting. And would not have thought about that.
Yeah.
Are there issues that because in Canada health care is publicly funded, does that create some issues with what the state requires and the individual might disagree with?
Well, I think that it's important to maintain the autonomy of the medical profession because the interests of government in terms of maybe saving money are not always in the best interest of the patient.
Okay.
So it's important for all physicians to be strong advocates for their patients to make sure that socialized medicine doesn't restrict the actual care that people require.
Right, okay. Now, so specifically, obviously, we're talking about end of life and medically assisted dying. So we have this new bill in Canada. It's fresh off the press, off the books. Can you tell us a little bit about, because in the previous months we've been talking in this program and in other programs and speculating on what this bill may be or what it would mean, but now we have a bill. So can you tell us a little bit about what I was going to say proposed bill is not proposed. It's the bill, it's the law. What does it say?
Well, it basically allows for physicians to prematurely terminate a patient's life. There are conditions in the bill that are, in our opinion, quite general. They're not. They're widely perceived to be safeguards. We question the efficacy of the safeguards. Basically, it's open to people who are 18 years of age and older, who have a grievous and irremediable medical condition, and also that one clause in the bill that was quite controversial was that the death had to be reasonably foreseeable.
Right. So and that did not make the bill.
No, that is part of the bill.
That is part of the bill.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think a lot of people would argue that, in fact, compared to what the propositions from the Joint Committee, that this is actually a lot more restrictive.
Yes. Well, again, there are a lot of legal questions that need to be answered. One of them is the point about death being reasonably foreseeable.
Yeah,
who can determine that?
Yeah.
We would have preferred that it would have been a terminal, that the condition itself would have been terminal. There would have been a terminal diagnosis. That's the case in the U.S. states that have legalized it.
Right.
Washington, Oregon, and California, and Vermont all require that the person be diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Right.
That provides some protection for people with disabilities, people with mental health problems, who are extremely vulnerable with this type of legislation.
Okay, so you're saying that the bill does not have that restriction?
The bill does have the restriction that it says that that death must be reasonably foreseeable, but it's not terminal.
Okay, so you're taking issue with the wording.
That's correct.
Okay,
that's
so
correct.
if I would like to seek this service in Canada, medically assisted dying, I have to be a mature adult, 18 or over.
That's right.
I have to have a condition that is
Grievous and irremediable.
grievous and irremediable. The condition or the suffering?
Well, you also have to, the condition itself has to be grievous and irremediable, and then you have to be experiencing suffering that is unacceptable to you, and that you're not willing to go through any of the treatments that might be there to ameliorate that
Right,
suffering.
and then do I have to consult with one or two physicians?
Two physicians.
Two physicians,
That's
and
correct.
there has to be a period of time. Do I have to make several requests?
There is a period of time, I think it's 10 days. It's not a very long period of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And presumably, just before it's going to happen, they're going to ask me one last time in case I change my mind.
That is correct.
Okay.
So it cannot be accessed through advance directives, for instance.
Okay, okay, that's important. So the advance directive request was not accepted.
That's right.
It was not approved.
Yeah.
So your organization, the Christian, obviously, the Christian Medical and Dental Society, do not support medically assisted dying.
No, that's
and
correct.
You certainly don't support the way this bill is written.
Correct.
Can you then, at the expense of going back, just to clarify for our audience, so for example, what is the problem with saying that the wording of grievous and irremediable, for example? Is there an issue with that, the way it's worded?
Well, we have to go back a step further and say that we don't agree with the legalization of euthanasia or assisted suicide at all.
Yes.
And the reason for that is that while it is true that certain people may, under the Constitution of Canada, have the right to terminate their life early, as soon as you allow that, you open the door to all kinds of people possibly being victims of wrongful death.
Right.
That I know from my work that there are people with mental health issues, there are homeless people, there are people with disabilities, many of whom are just living day by day, and all it takes is for one external event to occur, and then they may not be able to.
Exactly.
And so the concern is that we essentially will be terminating the lives of people whom society has failed.
Yes.
And that rather than taking the correct approach, which is to walking with them and supporting them, we find it easier as a society just to terminate them completely.
Yeah, of course. And that I would say the Catholic Church would completely agree. I mean, that's what we've been saying on Salt and Light TV for 10 years.
Yes.
And especially in the last couple of months, that this does not fit into, what we would say is compassion and caring and walking with people, and it's certainly no part of professionals would define as palliative care.
And I in my work as a deacon, I've tried to communicate this to people at a pastoral level.
Yes.
And it takes a few sessions for them to understand the implications.
Yes.
Most people believe that what we're talking about is a patient who is terminally ill, who is suffering from unbearable physical pain.
Yes.
And the reality is that the conditions in the bill are not that at all. It doesn't require terminal illness. It does not require physical pain.
Okay, but that's why I ask you about like the wording of like irremedial suffering. Like those are not legal terms. It's not a medical term.
No, it's a very vague. It's trying to create a dividing line, where in fact there is no objective dividing line.
Okay.
And the concern is that, as has been the case in other jurisdictions that have legalized this many years ago, is that you eventually get to the point where you are normalizing suicide.
Yes,
Because
yes.
there's no logical place to draw the line with these requests.
Which is why everybody has been talking about the slippery slope, and we
That's
know that
right.
the slippery slope is real, but can you tell us what will be a realistic example of how the slippery slope would work with this bill the way it's worded?
Well, a realistic example would be around the issue of grievous and irremediable. How grievous is grievous and how irremediable is irremediable.
Yeah.
And, it can be a real challenge. I mean, we saw it with the bill. There were changes that were made from the original BC Supreme Court decision to the Supreme Court of Canada. There were changes there.
Yes.
Then there were huge changes that were proposed by the Joint Parliamentary Committee when they were talking about children and they were talking about,
meant people with mental health
So if you
issues.
don't see the slippery slope, you're missing something that's obvious. I liken it to if there's a robber outside your door and you open your front door a crack, you're really endangering yourself.
Yeah.
And because he will just simply push the door open and push it all the way open.
Yeah,
and
keep
that's
pushing and
exactly
pushing
the
and pushing.
situation.
And
that
you
we're
and your
in.
work have traveled. I mean, you've been to Belgium, you've been, I believe, Holland as well.
That's
You've
right.
seen other jurisdictions where
right.
this has been the case.
Yes. I spoke, when I was in Holland 2 years ago, I spoke with Dr. Theo Boer, who was a medical ethicist there. He was on a euthanasia review committee for 9 years. So his job was to sit on this committee and get input, and to basically get input from doctors on cases of euthanasia that they've committed. And amazingly, in those cases, they did not follow the criteria under the Dutch law.
Really?
Examples of things like someone was supposed to be seen twice or 3 times with 2 doctors over a period of time. They were seen once by 1 doctor.
Yeah.
Examples like that.
Right.
So it's a situation where when you make it legal for a doctor to terminate a life, you create a situation of malaise, of questioning about the integrity and the value of a human life, and people get sloppy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, Dr. Boer told me that what had happened in Holland essentially is there has been a normalization of suicide.
Yeah.
And recently the pro-euthanasia lobby in Holland proposed that anyone over the age of 70 should be able to access euthanasia with no restrictions. When the lawmakers reviewed that, the medical society said, well, in actual fact, you don't have to worry about that because over age 70, everybody has some kind of health problem. So we really don't think there's going to be a restriction there.
Yes.
And
death is foreseeable for
death
everyone.
is foreseeable. So it cheapens life.
Yes,
And
yes.
you ask yourself, where in fact is this going?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a little break.
Sure.
We're speaking with Larry Worthen. He's the executive director of the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Canada. We're talking about Bill C-14, which is the bill that has legalized medically assisted dying in Canada. It's a short break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're speaking about Bill C-14, which is the bill that has legalized medically assisted dying in Canada. I'm speaking with Deacon Larry Worthen, Executive Director of the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Canada. I think part of the challenge in Canada is that we have this bill that's federal, but healthcare is delivered provincially. So does that create
That's
some
right.
problems?
It creates a big headache. In all other jurisdictions internationally where this has been legalized, there's been very specific conscience protection. The California conscience law protects against the requirement to refer, the requirement to perform, to assist in performing, and even protects you against discrimination if you're not willing to do it. Unfortunately, when we were lobbying at the federal level, they were nervous about getting involved in provincial jurisdiction. When we talk to the provinces, they're nervous about legislating at all.
So then you're saying the lawmakers would have been hesitant to be very specific about conscience rights in the federal bill because that is a provincial jurisdiction.
That's exactly right. Now, we were able to lobby to get a really good clause in the federal bill. It says nothing in this legislation would require anyone to perform or assist in the performance of medical aid in dying. And it also affirms that people have conscience rights under Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But unfortunately, it couldn't deal specifically with areas of provincial jurisdiction.
So then we have 10 provinces. Does that mean that there's going to be 10 different
There could very well be
procedures,
there
policies?
could be 10 different procedures, and not only that, you could have provinces where each health authority has a different procedure, or each hospital has a different procedure.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to be a landmine problem for physicians in Canada.
Now, Quebec passed their bill a year ago.
Yes.
How have they handled conscience protection?
They require that the physician refer to a medical administrator. We are very concerned about that, and we feel that recommendation could be massaged a bit and tweaked a bit so it could work for us, but we intend to follow up with Quebec on that.
Okay, so then just to be clear for our viewers, the concern is that if I go to my doctor and I would like medically assisted dying and the doctor refuses, he has to refer me to somebody else.
Well,
that can do it.
that is the case currently in Ontario.
That is the case in Ontario.
Because of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, they have a policy that requires referral. For Catholics, this is a huge moral problem because the Church sees referral as consistent with actually doing the action itself.
Yeah, of course. You think that even for non-Catholics, the referral, I mean, right?
We have, well, just to give you an idea, today we were interviewing a lady who was an Orthodox Jew who has the same concern. Evangelicals had the same concern.
Yeah, of course.
Other religious groups and even people who don't have a religious background have the same concern. They feel that by referring for something, they're actually being complicit in that action.
Now, you mentioned, so you're specifically talking about Ontario. So there are doctors' associations or medical associations in each province?
That's correct.
So in Ontario, it's the medical association that has this particular requirement?
No, the requirement is the College of
the college.
The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario.
Ontario.
They're the regulatory body.
In Ontario.
Yeah, that's correct. The Ontario Medical Association, on the other hand, is supporting our position. They are saying that doctors should not have to act against their conscience.
So how does that work when you have the association, the society, and the college saying two different things?
Well, it's happened in this case. Normally, they're pretty consistent in their approach, but the Canadian Medical Association has gone on record as saying that doctors should not be forced to do things that go against their conscience.
And how does it look across the country in other provinces?
Strangely, we have many other provinces that are not going to force us to refer. We have proposals, a direct access proposal, and also a proposal for a complete transfer of care. Both of which are morally acceptable to Catholics and others, that we've proposed to these provinces, and they've accepted our proposals.
Okay, can you tell me about those? So in the best case scenario, what would that look like if you're the doctor and you're not going to refer, how does that work for me because it's my right to have medically assisted dying? How would that work?
Well, we would have to look at this differently, perhaps in three different scenarios, if I could do it that way.
Yes.
Let's say that you happen to be a patient in a Catholic facility. Well, in a Catholic facility, then it is possible for there to be a patient-initiated transfer of care to another facility.
Okay.
So that looks after that problem. If you are a patient who comes into my office, let's say, and you walk in and you ask for medical aid in dying, I'm going to, first of all, as your physician, explain to you that I have a conflict. I'm going to talk to you about your suffering to see if there's other ways of ameliorating it.
Yeah.
But if you decide that you want to continue to see me as your doctor, but you also want to access medical aid in dying, what we're proposing is that you as a patient would be able to contact a referral number that would be offered through the Department of Health,
Right.
and you would be able to access your assessment that way through another physician.
Right.
I could continue to see you in all other aspects of your medical care. Now, if you happen to be very unwell and in a facility, for instance, in a facility that allows medical aid in dying, then there's something called a complete transfer of care. So if I'm treating you as your physician there and you want to access this, then you could simply ask for a transfer of care to another physician in the facility who would provide you with that request.
So, but it would have to be patient initiated.
Correct.
Which makes sense now. This idea of there being a referral number, is that in the works anyway? That there's
Yes,
the MAD hotline?
Yeah, there will be a referral number in most provinces. The question is whether or not it is going to be acceptable for the patient to make that call themselves.
Right.
We're simply saying that if you want that, if the patient wants to continue to work with the conscientious objector, then we have to have these provisions that will allow this workaround to happen.
It's interesting that that second scenario that you mentioned that I found I would have never thought about, that if the patient wants to stay with me as a doctor, but I am a conscientious objector, that I can still work with that patient. I guess because as a Christian doctor, you're not going to abandon your patient anyway.
That's
unless
right.
they want to move on to another doctor.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people in the secular world don't understand this about us. They assume that if we are that opposed to physician-assisted death, that we're going to be judgmental,
And
we're going to be abandoning the person, and we know couldn't be anything further from the truth, because.
Or try to convince that patient that that's not the best. I mean, I suppose that could be a concern for some people.
Yes.
I don't want my doctor convincing me that this is not for me.
Or putting down my opinion or something like that.
Exactly.
No, it's not that at all. If a Christian doctor were to object with every patient when the patient had some aspect of the lifestyle that was going against the Christian doctor's perspective, you'd be spending all your time admonishing patients and never getting any medicine done. No, it's not that at all. It's just that once the patient makes up their minds, they want to take this route, we're simply asking that we not be morally implicated in their decision.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Now, can you think of, I mean, clearly this bill has just been passed, but can you think of examples where some of this may already be happening in Canada? I guess in Quebec it's happening. Stories or examples where this has put doctors in a compromising situation
it's happening,
or a legal situation?
It's happening right now, today, in Ontario. There are numerous hospitals that have developed policies that require referral. And doctors are in a position where they're going to have to choose between their career and their conscience. Because the minute they go against the college, they can be sanctioned.
Right.
They could even lose their license for this.
Right.
So doctors are in this dilemma right now in Ontario.
Now we talk about medical practitioners. Does it only affect doctors, or can it affect pharmacists or any other nurses, any other practitioners?
That's right. It could affect other practitioners as well. It all depends upon how the provincial colleges determine what rules they set up. So we just feel it's very, very important that conscience, which is a key value in Canadian society, is protected at this level.
Yeah. Now, you are not a doctor, you're a lawyer.
That's
Can
right.
you see situations where this is just going to open a whole legal can of worms with lawsuits and court challenges and problems like that?
Well, the three physicians organizations in Ontario are currently challenging the College of Physicians and Surgeons policy. We had a regular application, and now we're trying to get before a judge for a judicial review, because we feel that what the college is doing is unconstitutional. So we think that's critically important, but the problem is it takes a long time to get before a judge. And what do we do in the meantime?
Yeah, exactly. Now, maybe just quickly, because we're running out of time, are there other concerns that doctors might have around this? I'm thinking of that patient-doctor relationship that could be affected once this becomes legal.
Well, there's concern about the patient-doctor relationship. I think the primary concern all of our doctors have is with the patients.
Yeah.
You know, will there be sufficient resources and time to properly deal with people who want to prematurely end their life?
Right.
Because it's not all what the general public thinks. There are all kinds of people out there with mental health issues, with disabilities, sad cases of people who are being challenged and who feel neglected and abandoned.
Yes.
Will society step up to help these people, or will they just become another statistic?
Yeah. So, what can we do?
Well,
is it too late?
No, it's not too late at all. I mean, your viewers can go to our website, Canadians for Conscience, and they can provide their emails, and they can assist us by sending letters to the decision makers to ensure that conscience rights are protected all over Canada.
Okay, so that's not just in Ontario, that's all over Canada.
All over Canada, because even in those provinces where they have indicated that they're prepared to work with us, there's always a chance that something could change down the road, or in their implementation, things might not work out. We need to monitor every province and every jurisdiction to make sure that conscience rights are protected and Christians are able to continue to practice medicine.
Okay, good. We're going to leave it there. Lots of good information here. I've been speaking with Larry Worthen, Deacon Larry Worthen. He's the Executive Director of the Christian Medical and Dental Society of Canada. The website he mentioned is canadiansforconscience.ca. Check it out. You can add your email and add your voice to this important cause. And if you want to find out more about the Christian Medical and Dental Society, they also have a website, is cmdscanada.org. Maybe you're a young person, you're a Christian, you want to be a doctor, that's where you need to go find out what that all might mean. And of course, you can always reach us here. If you have any questions or comments about anything you hear on this program, email us, perspectives@saltandlighttv.org. And of course, you can always reach us via Facebook and Twitter. That's it for tonight. May God continue to bless you and your home.